Welcome to Anything Goes. I'm your 5-wing 4 host, Madison.
And I'm your 9-wing 1 host, Caden.
And this is a podcast about the Enneagram. So, are we ready to just jump on into some announcements?
Sure. I gotta scroll all the way back up. We're a people on platforms, including email and Twitter and Discord and YouTube. Email us, tweet us at EnneathingGoes. Our email is EnneathingGoes@gmail.com.
Yep.
We will respond eventually.
Mm-hmm. We'd also like to thank everyone who has tweeted at us or spoken to us on the Discord or sent us emails. It's been really awesome.
A wild ride.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that there are other people out there, that they exist, and are listening to us right now.
And also thanks to Enneagram for Idiots and Tara for mentioning us on the show. That was really nice, and it made our night because
it was.
Yeah, because we love
the Enneagram.
Yeah. Caden turned me onto the podcast, and I've listened to like every episode religiously. So
that was almost exclusively what I listened to in Japan when we were first hanging out.
Really?
So much time, just like you're walking around, you're on trains and stuff. I listened to that, and I listened to a lot of stuff about my D&D campaign, which I think is like those are my two main core personality traits right there. So,
Yep. Some disclaimers. We are not safe for work, and we're very gay, and LGBT friendly.
We're not professionals.
And we're not.
Yep.
And we're not Christian.
No.
So.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Although, I found... Okay, that's not even related. I don't know why I said although. I found a book about the Sufi Enneagram. Very interesting.
Ooh.
Very interesting.
I'll leave the title of the book in our show notes because I don't remember what it is.
The Sufi Enneagram, Sign of the Presence of God, Secrets of the Symbol Unveiled. It feels a little bit too like theology for my brain that can't do theology or philosophy. But if you're interested, check it out.
Mm-hmm. I'm definitely gonna buy my own copy of this book because Caden has shown me little snippets of it, and it definitely seems like very interesting, obscure Enneagram stuff that I would just love to just weasel into.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a 5 and love that kind of so definitely seems like something a 5.
Author's name is I'm gonna butcher this name. Okay, Laleh Bakhtiar. Check it out.
I have no idea also how it's pronounced, and I also don't have it in front of me, so that's good enough.
So every time at our introductions, at the beginning, we do a little segment. We a question of the month. Really, we don't do weekly things. And our question is always sort of related to what our next episode is going to be. So we this one was nice because this episode is about 9s. I'm a 9. My best friend is a 9. I'm sorry, not you, Maddie. I have lots of best friends. And I think that's like the byproduct of being a 9 is you just like collect best friends. You have to give them like different names, like Elena's my best. No, beep that name out, I guess. I got one person. The other 9 is like my best bud.
Yeah.
And then there's like the best friend from home, TM.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like you, right? And you just give them like.
What's my title?
You're a best friend.
Just best friend.
TM called bestie.
Okay.
And then my ex-roommate, other best friend, is called best dude.
Okay.
That was a complete tangent. Anyway, our question for 9s is kind of a variation of the trolley problem. Would you choose to kill 10 people and save someone you love, or have your loved one killed to save 10 people?
I'll go ahead and let you start because you have a little bit more.
I
texted one of my friends who is a confirmed 9 and got her answer.
I also texted a different friend too. I don't know. I just have a lot of 9s in my life. I don't know why. So
popular.
me and Best Dude are in agreement that it's save the person you love. My other friend said that they would ask for advice from someone else. Which seems like they're going to 6.
Yes. See, I definitely feel like you had a point here about the surrounding situation is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think that is probably the most important of a decision, because I feel like if there's a bunch of people around and there's pressure on you to save the 10 people,
then you're going to save the 10 people, and then you're going to hate yourself forever for it, and then you're going to become depressed.
Yes. Well, I feel like depression is going to be there either way, because I feel like a 9 would still feel some guilt.
You're going to feel bad about it.
Yeah. But my friend Alex said, quote, "I'm sure that those 10 people are loved by somebody as well. So instead of letting 10 people lose someone they love, I would lose one person that I love in return."
Ugh. I can already feel that this is going to be such a hard episode for me.
And I don't know if she was just saying that because there was pressure of like, I am asking, like there is a pressure to like look a certain way, and I don't know, especially since she does have I believe she has a 1 wing. Not clarified, but there would be a little bit of pressure to like do the right thing because I was asking it directly.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that if literally no one's around, you just have the like little lever where you can switch the tracks, and it's just the person you love versus 10 random people. Yeah, you're definitely gonna choose the person you love. As a 5, I think that I would just be selfish and choose the person I love no matter what.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would. I think it's just like very hard to face the reality of someone that you care about and you love a lot versus the idea of 10 other people.
Yeah. Good question for the 9s. If you have something else you want to chime in, other 9s or people who know 9s, please email us or tweet at us about it.
Tell us how wrong we are.
Yeah. So let's jump on into some Type 9 basics recapped. We did do our first episode ever was an introduction. We kind of talked about all of the 9 types briefly, and so we're going to recap some of that information. But you should definitely give that episode a listen for a little bit more of in-depth basics, and we did some fun stuff like memes and stuff for them. But yeah, so Type 9 names. So I'll go ahead. I'll let you read it.
I have a funny story about this first name.
Yeah?
Yeah. Okay. So the first name is the referee, and I'm an athlete, or I was all the way through college. And when I was little, I did a lot of like baseball, softball stuff, right? That was my big sport. And there was a opportunity, like I don't know how familiar you guys are with sports, but there was a play where I was out by a lot, right? And the umpire called me safe, and I turned to him and I said, no, I was out though. And at this point I was like a small child. I was, maybe 8. And everyone on my team was so mad at me. And I was like, I can't lie. But that would feel so bad if I were like I'm sure they're so angry right now. The other team was so mad about it. It's okay, I can be out.
Did anything like that ever happen when you were like older?
No,
You
I mean,
think it?
'cause I learned because my team was mad at me, so I learned my lesson. I was like, oh no, I can't. I guess I just have to play the game now. Can't do that anymore. I thought I was doing the right thing. Maybe that's my one wing. I don't know. I thought
Your
other
one
names
wing told you to call yourself
myself
out,
out, and then everyone got mad at me, and I was like, oh no, don't get mad at me. I'm
the 9 was like, okay, I'll
not
just.
mad.
Yeah. Okay, so some other names are the Dreamer, the Mediator, the Peacemaker, and then I think you have a quote here
I
about
have
another
a
9.
little quote here from the Enneagram Institute. If you don't know about them, they're a really great online tool and resource. But they have a description. They say, quote, we have sometimes called the 9 the crown of the Enneagram because it is at the top of the symbol and because it seems to include the whole of it, end quote. So I thought that was, it's not really a name for the 9, but the crown of the Enneagram as a concept really leads in nicely to sort of the key components of what it's like to be a 9.
Mm-hmm. And also, because it seems to include the whole of it, we're going to circle back to that a little later in the podcast. So just kind of hang on to that. Because Kate and I have some theories.
We do have theories.
We have theories. They are unsubstantiated theories at the moment.
All of the best ones are.
But when we write our book, though, I think we should include a lot of research into this, like
This
what we
specific
have.
phenomena.
Yeah, this pattern that we have discovered, or I think we've discovered. If someone else has discovered it, please let us know.
Please give us resources about
Mm-hmm.
this because we have questions.
Yes. But we'll check back in with that a little later.
Yes.
So continuing on to the fears and desires. I'll let you go through these.
Okay. You're really letting me take the reins.
I know.
It's very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice
You
of you to.
know, you know the most about you. I have some observations.
I know a little bit about me, and I feel like the signs would stay the same. I know a little bit about me. The rest of it is just a mystery. Will we ever find out? Who knows? I had so many big plans for this episode. I was like, oh my gosh, like 9s, I've got this. Let's do this whole interactive thing where we like, you have the theater experience. We'll bring people through the brain of a 9 and they can like merge with people like I merge with people. It'll be great. And then reality hit and none of that happened. And I do feel though that like that little vignette is typical of probably what 9s and also maybe 3s and 6s.
See, I was gonna push you to pursue it a little bit more, but then an update on my life. I broke my arm and got kind of. No, I didn't break the ankle. I just sprained the ankle, and the ankle sprain wasn't very bad. I mean, it still hurts a little bit now, but I was up and walking on it within a week. The break in my arm though, that sucks. I'm still in a cast.
Yeah.
And so we got kind of wrapped up in that, and I didn't have really any time. And this is the first episode that I haven't really done hardly any research on.
It's perfect though. It's like you're living the 9 life right now. You're just flying by the seat of your pants, just sort of rolling into things. That's how we gotta live for this specific moment. I don't know. It was overly ambitious. I like started a new job and stuff. I was never gonna actually get it done. Need to start learning these things about myself. Fears and desires. 5 minutes later. We fear as 9s loss and separation. And I think this is part of the reason reading this stuff is like why I was like, there's no way I'm a 9. I don't fear loss and separation. That's not something that I fear. But it's for 9s, I think it's sort of typical of some of the, not to get overly dramatic, but the tragedy of all of the like our human nature, right? Is that fundamentally the types create a self-fulfilling prophecy a lot of the times with their fears. So 9s, they want inner stability. They crave that sense. That's their desire. That sense of stability. They crave that sense of being at peace, being in harmony with the world. And that means that they're afraid of things upsetting that balance. They're afraid of people leaving them. But what that means is that your defense mechanisms are going to either never have people get actually close to you, or cutting them out when they get to be too close to avoid feeling that pain, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And really, it just means that you're feeling it earlier, because you're lonely or you're cutting people off from your life. But the way that they're coping with that is sort of the stereotypical nine. Like when you think of what nines are, you think of this. You're going to minimize your own self to approximate a feeling of intimacy. Because you've cut yourself off from being intimate. Because to be intimate, you'd have to open yourself up to the possibility of loss, even though, you're already separated. You've decided that you're going to be separated because that's sort of how the logic of your brain works, right? But you still want the connection, so in order to have that connection, in order to tell yourself that you have that connection, you're going to minimize your own needs.
Now I have a question, and
Yep.
it might be, I might end up having to cut it because it might be too much for you to want to put on the podcast. But so in our relationship so far, you have ghosted me on 2 separate occasions.
Yeah.
Both for periods of 3 to 6 weeks. And so I was wondering, do you is that a problem that you specifically face? Have you done that to other people, or
I ghost people constantly.
Yeah.
And it's bad though too, because I will ghost people and then tell myself that I'm not ghosting them, right? I will tell myself that it's not an issue, that I'm not thinking about it. And I think specifically for our relationship and our friendship, it happened at very pivotal moments where we were growing closer, right? And so that's you cut yourself off from people before they can reach a point of intimacy for you, emotional intimacy, mainly for that. In my experience, that's what it's been. For other people, it's just like intimacy with your time, intimacy with your body, maybe, I don't know. But for us, we were at a point in our friendship where we were growing close, building bonds. And it's difficult to feel like you can open yourself up to that and in sort of fight, flight, or freeze way. My reaction a lot of times is to either flight or freeze. And so I think nines ghost each other, not each other, but other people a lot.
It's very interesting.
And it's got to be about those pivotal points though, where you feel like, oh, this is a lot. This is a lot. I'm being vulnerable here. I don't like this.
Interesting. Because see, the reason I brought up this question is because I have been ghosted before and I've done ghosting, but with other nines, because I've also been ghosted by this other nine that I was hooking up with. It was weird. You remember Ash?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was weird. It was a weird time.
I think in that situation though, it still pans out.
But with ghosting from nines, it's a very different kind of ghosting. And it's both deliberate, but also it usually you've ghosted me twice.
Yep.
And we're still here, we are doing the podcast, still best friends. So it's very weird to be ghosted by a 9, or at least from a 5's aspect. I don't know about other numbers, but from a 5's aspect, it's kind of like, what just happened? Oh, okay. And then we were back to being friends again, and it was like, oh, okay. I still don't know what's happening, but we're friends again? Yes? Okay.
And the problem is for the 9, in the 9's brain, you never stopped being friends.
Mm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, oh, we're not friends anymore. It was, like, it takes a certain level of emotional, I don't want to call it like maturity, but like emotional maturity, really, to be able to say, like, hey, this is
Mm-hmm.
where I'm at right now. And 9s sort of start from behind the curve, it feels like, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I feel like in the trajectory of my very young life, where I've been in relation to other people that I've talked to and their own emotional journeys and personal journeys as they grow into adults, really. But the contrast of that is that my ability to be emotionally connected to situations, because as we're going to talk about, your integration point is 3, which is in the heart center. It's the center of the heart center, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was so stunted
Yeah.
for so long.
Mm. Other 9s chime in. Do you have problems with ghosting people? Do you even notice if you're ghosting people? Is it like Caden, where you still feel like you're friends, but people, I don't know, maybe got their feelings hurt or something? And I had another part of that question, but I forgot it. So,
Yeah, I talked for a long time.
well, no, I just thought the question, and then as soon as I thought it, it left. And it was a good one too, which is sad.
Maybe we'll put it in the end in the show notes.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So, ready to move on to
Yep.
growth and stress?
So 9s are affectionately in the circle of death, or the triangle of death, really. So the 3, 6, and 9 all sort of form a line of continual integration and disintegration, which means that they're all very interconnected in the ways that they act. But for 9s, they're moving to 3 in growth and to 6 in stress. So 3 is integration, 6 is disintegration.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a couple of different quotes here that I thought might be fun to read out. One's from this website called Integrative 9.
Mm.
And the quote is, even though 9s experience a range of intense feelings, they will project an even-tempered and easygoing demeanor. They will keep strong feelings to themselves, allowing others to experience the 9 as very approachable and serene, even though they may not feel this way internally.
Hmm.
And so that's what I'm talking about, like the way that you feel almost like closed off emotionally
Mm-hmm.
as an average level 9 sometimes, like emotionally unavailable. I
Mm-hmm.
know that's been a point of contention for me in relationships before,
Mm.
which is very odd for me because I feel like I have a lot of emotions. You know, I have them all the time. I wish I could get rid of them, but
Mm-hmm.
they're there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not like integrating the 3 isn't about having strong emotions. I want to get rid of that misconception about like strong emotions, heart type. The center of the heart type is just like, oh well, you finally have strong emotions, because I think people who don't know 9s aren't 9s might think that 9s don't have until they go to 3 and then they have emotions. It's about recognizing and acknowledging them and then being brave enough to share it with other people.
So, as a 5 looking into this, and it might just be me as a 5 kind of picking up on being kind of aware of like friends, whenever you were having a strong emotion but weren't expressing it, I was like, oh, they're having an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I would either be like, I'll respect their boundaries because I don't want people to dig into my emotions. So it's okay. You stay over there. You have your emotion. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't know if it's necessarily that other people don't think that 9s have emotions until they go to 3. I think it's more that they just may not know
To
deep
interact with it.
how to interact with it, or how deep or how shallow it goes, because
Mm-hmm.
that is one, because there's the sereneness outside, you can see that there's either a storm or calm like inside, but
Mm-hmm.
there's no way of knowing how big that storm is or how
Yeah.
or how calm.
Yeah.
It's more like you just get a general sense of the emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a metaphor that or a, sort of analogy here written down, that emotions for nines are like a radio frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And like occasionally a banger comes on and you turn it up, but most of the time you don't want your radio too loud because it's annoying and it like distracts you from your daily life. So just kind of keep it down in like a soft whisper, but it's always sort of in the back of your ear.
Mm-hmm. Which is very interesting because as a 5, that's similar to a 5's emotional kind of range.
Mm-hmm.
However, for a 5, it is very much of a, this feeling is intense, I will suppress it. And it becomes the kind of annoying radio in the back where it's like, I'm ignoring you.
Nines
No.
emotions in the radio frequency sense are the TikTok of that mom that has the really loud rap music come on that's like swearing a bunch, and she goes, no, 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 turn it up, turn it up. That's what nines are in this radio metaphor. She's like hitting it, trying to get it to go off. But like this, like even though she's not even that old, she's like 40, like you should know how to work a goddamn Bluetooth speaker, but like she just like is panicking. She cannot figure out how to get this out of her nice little serene space that she's got going on.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's move on to the intelligence center, and then we can circle back around to your object relation triad. I think it'll just go smoother if we explain the intelligence center stuff first.
For sure.
Okay. So there are 3 intelligence centers, and it's your head and fear, or body and anger, or heart and shame. So for the 9, they are the center of the body and anger um, triad. And so the way the triads work is that in each one there are 3 types. One is internal facing, one is external facing, and one, which are the center of each, so the 3, 6, and the 9 that we're talking about, are the most for each thing, but the most removed from it as well. And so we talked a little bit more about this with the 3s and the 6s. So
Bruce
for the
Banner is
9s,
a 9.
huh?
Bruce Banner, the Hulk, is a 9.
Yeah.
If that helps contextualize the anger,
Mm-hmm. But yes, so 9s are simultaneously the most connected to their body and the most connected to their anger, but also the most removed from it or the most unaware of it. Want to explain a little more?
Yeah.
How that, yeah.
I mean, intelligence center, like body stuff specifically, has always like I get the head thing, I get the heart thing, but I think because I don't want to just blame like, oh, because I'm a 9, but it does kind of feel like, oh well, because I'm a 9, I just really don't get what the body thing is. But I can kind of like approximate it based on the quote unquote symptoms, like
Mm-hmm.
I angry wash dishes.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go and rewash dishes the other day, so I didn't get into a fight with my roommate about something super trivial. Um, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like that kind of stuff, or if I'm going to be thinking about things, walking is
Mm-hmm.
nice. And once
Mm-hmm.
I for the 9s, it's very inertial, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like once I get moving, I want to keep on moving, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
just can't stop. Once I stop, I don't want to start moving again, And so that's the like
Mm-hmm.
this we'll get into later passions and virtues
Mm-hmm.
about like 9s being a sloth.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that sort of inertial, self-forgetting laziness is less about like you're not going to be moving and more about once you're moving, you're going to be moving.
Mm-hmm.
But
Um,
I do have a question for 9s. I feel like
oh.
this is important for me to know. But when was the last time you really looked at your body? I don't know if this is a 9 thing or if this is just a person thing.
Okay. Good question. I have something to chime in on my observation of this and putting into perspective the most in their body yet most removed from it.
Mm-hmm.
Watching you, for the most part, you're very movement oriented, even when you think you're being a sloth. Like, it's almost like you have to be moving all the time. So, like, for instance, when we would be like chilling, watching a movie, you'd be playing your like cookie clicker game,
Oh,
like
yeah.
just obsessively tapping your phone, but we'd be watching the movie and like chill, and it would seem like you just didn't, like, you knew, you were aware, especially when you were stressed. But like, even when you weren't stressed and it wasn't as obsessive with the cookie clicker, you were still moving a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you were necessarily always aware of the fact that you were moving.
No.
And like when we would go places and we'd have to walk somewhere, I would have to like hang on to you
Oh, yeah, I walk
to
fast.
he walks so fast and I have short stubby legs. And so I would be like, slow down for the love of God.
Yeah. Alyssa
And
has to do
so
the same thing to me.
and so I would grab Caden's backpack and just hold him back and like set the pace. Because if not, I would lose you and then I would just be lost because we all know I can't read a map. Save my life. Actually, one time you guys did leave me. Remember the one time we were all in the store
Yeah.
and y'all left and I was like, oh no. And I rounded a corner and found you guys. Good times. Um, but yeah. So did you want to circle back to the connection to the object relation triad section that you had in
Sure.
the notes?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that the I mean, I always feel kind of doomed. They're always like, oh, well, 9s and 3s and 6s it's so hard to integrate
Mhm.
because you're integrating to a person that integrates the person that you're disintegrating to,
Mhm.
But also part of it is the fact that you're in the object relation triad of attachment.
And we'll do a full episode on all the different triads. So
This
check
is,
back in for that
yeah,
one later.
next level shit,
Mhm.
right? A bunch of different triads that you get, but the quote I have is from The Modern Enneagram by Casey Berghoff, and Melanie Bell. And it's the attachment triad reflects how we all attach and attempt to remain in a flow with the world around us. Type 3, 6, and 9 tend to focus on attaching to and then maintaining a certain internal state. This ranges from the attachment to others' desires, to attachment to external support, to attachment to a sense of inner peace. These types' defense mechanisms strive to keep things just the way they are. So the 9 flavor of that sort of internal state is the attachment to a sense of internal peace. You can map those other states onto the different types. But
Mhm.
the basic thing is that attachment triad combined with the fact that you're integrating to people that you're disintegrating to, and it's all a big jumbled mess, means that I don't know if I've ever really integrated that much in my life.
Mm.
I think I've had moments where I'm like, oh, I'm integrating because I'm doing things. But the problem is that you can be a 9 doing things at an average level and feel like you're integrating to 3, but still not actually be in touch with your emotions. Still not be challenging yourself at all, and the idea of the internal peace that you so sort of treasure and prize.
Hmm. Hmm. It's very interesting to me because
But what
because
part?
I just the not like thinking you're integrating and then just not being integrating.
Mm-hmm.
because there's a very clear switch within me when, as a 5, I integrate to 8, just because they're very different modes of conduct, and yeah, um, interesting. And I'm trying to think if I've ever seen you integrate to 3. I know I've seen you at
I've
6.
disintegrated plenty.
Yeah.
I've disintegrated a lot. And I can tell when it happens because I get very stressed and anxious.
Mm.
And, I like to think that I'm like a fairly stable person. There've been a couple different points in my life where I've been like, I've had really rough times, but I like to think on the whole of it. But that's another one that's the thing about 9s, though, is that you always sort of are looking on the bright side of things, and you're always thinking, oh, well, I'm fine. This is fine.
Interesting. Ready to move on to the passions and the
I
virtues?
am ready.
Okay. So, the passion of the 9 is sloth,
Yeah.
or self-forgetting, laziness, and indolence. Indolence? Is that how you say that? I've only ever read that word. I don't think I've ever said it out
I'm
loud.
pretty sure that's how you say it. And in the initial sort of Enneagram, like in the Christian version of the Enneagram, they map these passions onto the 9 sins or the 7 sins, and they add 2 more. So you can tell I'm not a Christian. I don't even know how many there are. But and I think that the typical way of talking about it is sloth, and then I've come across a couple different authors that don't like that. They don't like talking about it as sloth because it seems like it's very hard to pin down what that means. It makes me think that like 9s are couch potatoes, and I'm a couch potato that has nothing to do with me being a 9. It's completely unrelated.
There's also a lot of them that have issues with the passions. The way they are laid out is that they can be very judgmental.
So judgy.
In that it's mirrored after the 7 deadly sins with fear and lies added in, as Caden said before. And when you frame something as a sin, it seems like it's a bad thing when
Right.
most of the time they're just coping tools and coping mechanisms,
And
which we're never going to lose those things.
mm-hmm.
We just learn how to use them without being detrimental to ourselves and our relationships to other people.
And it's not helpful to judge yourself when you're trying to do deep sort of self-love kind of work.
Yeah.
But I think we talk a lot in the reason that I'm going to circle back around to the sort of the 9 as the crown of the Enneagram and seeming to encompass a lot of those things, and not about our theory yet. Keep dangling that in front of you, but more about the idea that the central problems of the 9 are sort of central problems that we all face, specifically when we're doing the type of work that the Enneagram is prompting. And that's the work of like self-improvement, the work of becoming more in tune with our inner natures and having that, like, letting that improve our relationships with other people and our life, quality of life. But that's the idea of being awake or asleep that gets thrown around a lot in the spiritual context of the Enneagram, in the sort of self-realization context, is very, very present for the 9s. And that's what that sloth is about. It's the spiritual forgetting.
Mm-hmm.
I have Claudio Naranjo's book where he talks about, I don't know how to say this word, acidia.
Where is it?
Accidia. Right
Give me
here.
1 second. I will look it up.
Look it up.
Accidia.
Accidia.
So Naranjo talks about not like sloth per se, but accidia. And he has a quote from Ennea-Type structures that is, a deafening to the spirit and a loss of the sense of being to the point of not even knowing the difference, presumably between like being and not being, or loss and not loss, not knowing difference, period. Anyways, the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the quote is, Achidia manifests as a loss of interiority, a refusal to see, and a resistance to change.
Mm. That's good, because I've been Googling what achidia means, and I cannot find what it means.
It's
Apparently
Greek.
Latin or
Naranjo
Greek. Oh.
likes the Greek word because it reminds him of like the Enneagram Greek stuff.
Mm.
I don't know.
Let's
But
see what
that's,
it
I mean,
translates to.
that's
Achidia translates to apathy.
apathy is a good
Yes.
way of thinking about it, is that you can become so apathetic to your own existence that in
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy levels, it means you're just like the sort of Enneagram Institute way of thinking about it is narcoticization, not narcotic. There's a word there. Narcotics is in the root of the word, and it essentially means substance abuse, over or under consuming anything. But that doesn't have to mean like alcohol. It's like I'm having a shitty day, so I need to eat because I want to feel bad.
Mm-hmm. We cover all the notes.
I think that's a lot of it. There's also, I mean, I have more quotes from Naranjo. I do actually kind of like this last one. Should I read it?
Yeah. Yeah, I like it a lot too. I'm reading it now.
So Naranjo has another quote, and it is, quote, in most cases, the failure to embody the ideal of loving one's neighbor as oneself comes from loving oneself more than one's neighbor. In Ennea-Type 9, the situation appears the opposite. So Naranjo also calls this the, quote, a psychological amputation that makes the 9 the least sensitive and most stoic of characters. So he's referencing here specifically what he calls, quote, love deprivation of the 9 and their, quote, depressive emotional context, which is not the nicest thing to hear about
Yeah,
yourself.
no.
It's
That
very,
was
it's also important for especially like 9s that are first starting out, finding about
mm-hmm.
themselves, to talk about it in terms like psychological amputation makes it real, the amount of harm you're doing to yourself, the kind
Yeah.
of harm that you would never perpetrate on like someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, I have a section over here later as we're talking about virtues, and the
Mm-hmm.
virtue of the 9 is love, and it's very hard to think about that as your virtue,
Mm-hmm.
because you think, well, yeah, of course, I do love people a lot. Like that's a thing. Like it makes you feel nice and good about that as a superpower. But it's also very hard to think about that as a virtue when you're an average level 9 because you don't love yourself, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
that's the sort of fundamental crux of the problem, is that you believe that to be lovable, you have to sort of be non-existent.
Mm.
And that fundamentally is not loving yourself. And I remember like one moment I had specifically where I had like a mental breakthrough. I don't know if I actually integrated because I wasn't really doing anything, but I felt things. So that maybe is my one moment of integration in my entire existence. And it was laying in my sort of small room in Japan, um, on my bed, being very, very sad about the world and my life and feeling so like disconnected from everything. You know, I'd moved halfway across the world. All of my friends were 12 hours different time zone. All of my family was a 12-hour different time zone. And I didn't really talk to them. I didn't really contact them as much as I was used to. I was in a different culture. There's so many things that make you feel alienated in that scenario. And as a 9, I think that was sort of the impetus for a lot of self-growth, because you are there, you're experiencing that loss and that separation, and it makes you confront the fact that you're afraid of it, right? And I was
Mm-hmm.
sitting there in my bed, laying down, feeling sorry for myself, and then I had the thought that like there's a word for it that they invented. All words are invented, but it's sonder, and it's the realization that every passerby has a life just as rich and complex as your own. And I had a thought that like the person that I had seen, the random ass person that I had seen walking to school that morning was at that moment living their own life and sort of wondering about what that life is and how they're feeling and what they're doing, and realizing that, like, for their basic humanity, that they're living their life and doing things that I felt like love for them as a human, which sounds very trite in the sort of abstract sense, but I think that we're all capable of that. You know, seeing someone random on the street and saying, like, oh, well, yeah, I love the fact that you're alive, that you're a person, that you get to like things and do things and be things, you know? And the idea that if I could feel that for a random person, then why couldn't I feel that for myself, right? And so that's how I turned it around and was like, well, you know, I can't feel like I'm a bad person and disconnected from everything when I can find a random person on the street and feel any sort of love or connectivity to that person just from the nature of them being a person. Someone else must feel that way for me. Why can't I feel that way for me? I know me a lot better, you know?
Right then. Ready to move on to blind spots?
Yep.
Okay. So I don't know if it would be better for you to hear me say blind spots or you to
Go
say them
for
and
it.
me tell you what your strengths are. I don't know.
No. I want to talk about how great I am.
Okay. Then I will do blind spots of the 9. So our first blind spot is 9s avoid being controlled by others in a counterintuitive way by being passive, non-assertive, and unmoved. This pattern of indirect behavior may impact on their communication and relationships.
Hmm. Yeah, we're passive aggressive bastards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very passive aggressive style. All right. So, 9s want to avoid being controversial, despite disliking it when people pressurize them into something. They also have difficulty saying no to people. While 9s will go out of their way to accommodate others and downplay their own needs, setting themselves up to be overlooked. 9s dislike being ignored.
Ugh, saying no is the hardest thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets me into so much trouble. Because I do what I think is saying no, which is just saying, oh, well, you know, maybe later. And then people are like, oh, but you said maybe later. And I
Yeah.
was like, I said no, but I just said it politely.
Alright. Many Enneagram 9s are unaware of their own passive aggressive behavior patterns and how these affect others around them.
100%.
Mm-hmm. Definitely takes a lot to, like, I don't know. It took a little bit of me to, like, learn your language.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I know it, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. A very specific way of speak. And the problem is that you think you're being perfectly clear. You're like, how could anyone misinterpret that? Like, I would read that and know that this is what they meant. But the problem is that everyone else is not in your brain.
Mm-hmm. In pursuing their need to ensure that everyone is being heard, 9s often present multiple viewpoints in conversation with others. This may lead to drawn out, lengthy explanations that cause the listener to lose interest. It can also impact negatively on the 9's degree of influence and even credibility. Now, this one is very interesting to me because you hate people who play devil's advocate.
Oh, I do so much.
Does that have anything tied into this? Because it sounds like 9s like to play devil's advocate and make sure everyone's viewpoint are heard. Is this a...
You know what? I'm going to have a little thing here. I'm going to have a little
Mm-hmm.
thing. There's a lot of literature that's going to say that 9s tend to be politically conservative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Politically, socially conservative. And I would like to point out that when they say that, they mean like conservative in the sense of conservative versus progressive in the sort of traditional political sense. They mean that 9s, as liking inner stability and the way things are going to be a little bit afraid of change naturally, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that they translate that to, oh, well, they won't want to change. I would argue that the modern America, we're in the US, so I'm talking about America. The modern American Conservative Party is actually fairly radical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not a
Mm-hmm.
good mix. Not a good mix for nines, stirring up a lot of trouble. And that the modern, like, liberal party, the Democrats, are actually fairly politically conservative in the sense that they are mostly establishment, with the exception of the socialists,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But I would
Yes.
also say that your identities matter a lot
Mm-hmm.
because it's very hard to be conservative, either in the like right-wing sense or in the political sense when the systems that are surrounding you are not built for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of feelings about it, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that everyone gets it wrong.
But circling back to Devil's Advocate.
Yeah,
Because
that
I
was a
feel,
complete tangent.
yeah, it was a completely, yeah. So do you think that you don't like people playing Devil's Advocate because it's something
Usually
that you
they're
see
doing it to be
yourself?
dicks.
Sorry?
Usually they're doing it to be dicks, though. I feel like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times when devil's advocate is used, I think about like high school debate class where that one guy argues for Nazis, you know? You're like, no,
Mm-hmm.
you're not actually being a like a devil's, you know. I do
Mm-hmm.
actually I like to play devil's advocate, but you know what I like to play devil's advocate for? When people come up with plans in our D&D campaign. You know? It's like low
Mm-hmm.
stakes shit, you know, where you're like, "Oh, I think that this is what's happening right now." And I'm like, "Really? Why do you think that?" What about this thing? Did you consider this? What about this thing? Did you consider this? And mostly at that point, I'm also kind of doing it to be a dick, but I'm doing it to be a dick because I love my friends.
Okay.
That answered none of your questions. I'm sorry.
It's, it's fine. Other nines, chime in. Do you think you play Devil's Advocate? If
Hmm.
so, why?
Do you hate
And
devil's advocates like I hate devil's advocates?
mhm. All right. And the last and final blind spot. In being diplomatic and accommodating, nines may fail to make their true needs, desires, and feelings known to the people around them. The nine may feel that they are doing so very clearly, but due to their approach, others may miss what they really want and need. It may also be that these needs and feelings are only being articulated in the nine's head and not being shared with others as openly and frequently as they think.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Basically, some summation of stuff that we went over before, but just more into the what a nine needs.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot to add to that. I feel like that sums it up pretty good.
Yeah. All
Strength.
right. Strengths. You
I have
have.
some points here, but I don't think that those are gonna stand the sort of acid test.
I would like you to read your strengths, and then you can
I
read the strengths that
came
I
up
put down too.
very convincing strengths. I thought that that was all we needed for this segment, but you know, Maddie wanted to go put in like actual information for you all. So I guess I'll just read all of it. But my points, which I think are just, you know, like really sum up most of what we need to know from this. I'm awesome. I'm very empathetic, and I'm a big hit at parties, you know. It's just very
Yes.
popular. People like me because
Which is all
I'm
true. It's all
even
true for
when they're
most
kind of
nines.
assholes. I don't know how to be mean to people. And unless it's unintentionally because I like them. It's very backwards. Anyways, I'm so agreeable. Nines are easy to get along. This is what I was talking about. Easy to get along with. Others experience them as open, receptive, and peaceful. Got a lot of leadership positions. And I think part of that is the fact that people are like, oh, you're easy to talk to. Because I just sit here. And I'm thinking in my head, leave me alone, but I don't say it. I understanding nines are able to differences and understand multiple perspectives with a great skill in synthesis and finding commonalities across difference. I think this is why I'm an anthropologist personally.
Hmm.
It's like something in my personality kind of drives me to. I'd say anthropologist. I don't fucking do anthropology anymore. I graduated.
You still have the degree though, so you're
I have a
you're an
degree in
anthropologist.
anthropology for the whole wide world to know about. I'm glad to share that with you. You too should do anthropology if you're a 9. It's a great fun time. Patient. I disagree that I am patient, but you know, I
You
like to
are
be.
more patient than me.
Yeah, but I'm not very patient. I can be pretty impatient sometimes. Anyways, 9s do things in a calm, sustainable way, trusting the natural. I am patient when other people are stressed out. This is what I found out. Other
Mhm.
people are stressed out. I can be very, very patient. I am stressed out. I cannot be patient at all. It ties in because I'm supportive. Others
Mhm.
feel accepted, heard, and understood in the presence of 9s. They accept people for who they are and see their full potential. Willing to roll with it. And genuine. What you see is what you get with the 9, and they are unpretentious. Others can be at ease with them. And I think this is part of actually like the 3 integration bit, right? Because 3s are
Mhm.
very like, authentic in their emotions. And when
Mhm.
9s integrate, they are also authentic in their emotions. So they like take that.
Mhm.
But they also have the sort of even keel of the normal stuff. So you just get authenticity all the time.
Or at least most of the time.
Most of the time.
If they're saying something, it's generally authentic. However, like you said, if you're sitting there not saying anything,
Right. I might be sitting there thinking in my head, dear God, you're an idiot. But I'll find a nice way to say that that doesn't actually say, dear God, you're an idiot. But maybe it's more diplomatic. Like, I love this thing that you're thinking about and this approach that you're taking. But have you considered like this other thing that you definitely don't know anything about, that you haven't thought about at all? You know? It's great. Make a horrible lawyer.
I don't know. It would depend on
Yeah,
what type
okay.
of lawyer you are.
I started going to school for pre-law. That's what I was gonna major in when I went into my undergrad degree. I was gonna do pre-law. I was a mock trial kid in high school. It was a big thing, but I no, I can't actually do it all the time though.
Yeah.
It's a bit much for me.
Mhm.
Do you
You
wanna
have.
explain our brand new, maybe not brand new theory?
Okay, so this was something that when I was going through like the types and learning how they integrated and like what they integrated and disintegrated to, I noticed a pattern. And the pattern is kind of weird. And basically, every so every type has their different connections through their own integration disintegration, their wings, and their wings integration to disintegration. So 4, 5, and 9 go somehow to every single other type. So for instance, we'll go through the 5. I am a 5, so I have that connection. I could have either a 4 or a 6 wing that I can develop and tap into. I disintegrate to 7. I integrate to 8. If I have a 4 wing, the 4 wing integrates to 1, disintegrates to 2. And if I tap into my 6 wing, that 6 wing integrates to 9 and disintegrates to 3. So that gives me
And
a connection to all of the numbers.
I think
Now,
that an important thing to sort of establish with the basis of this theory for us is that, it's easy to say, oh, well, I have a connection to the types that I'm integrating and disintegrating to. It's a little bit of a harder sell for people sometimes, maybe that your wings, that somehow through your wings you're connected via integration and disintegration. But I think when you take into account the fact that we are all constantly in a state of flux between integration and disintegration and borrowing those traits.
mhm,
And the fundamental premise of the Enneagram is that you're borrowing traits from pretty much all around the circle, right? That
mhm.
it makes sense that your wings would also take on, in their sort of base state when you're accessing them, elements of integration and disintegration. I
Mhm.
don't think that I've ever heard people talk about that when you read stuff about the Enneagram, but it makes
It's
sense in my
definitely
brain.
in the Melanie Bell and Casey Berger
Okay,
book.
well,
They talked
they're
about if you have this wing, you take on some of these good traits and some of these bad traits and things like that.
And the good traits, bad traits are generally the integration disintegration.
But yeah, and you may not personally have developed your other wing yet, so you may not be connected to those integration disintegration points yet, but through growth and through exploring that wing, you should be able to connect to those theoretically.
To borrow a metaphor from the Enneagram for Idiots podcast, your wings are part of your tool belt, your sort of emotional tool belt, or psychological, social, whatever, tool belt. And your other wing is in there. It's just very dusty.
But yeah, so in this pattern, 4s, 5s, and 9s all connect somehow to every single type in the Enneagram. 1s and 2s miss a connection to 5. 7 and 8 miss a connection to 4. And then 6 and 3, the kind of centers and the in the the triad, which triad name is it? The attachment triad?
Triad.
Yeah, they both are missing 2 connections, which the 3 is missing a connection to 5 and 7, and a 6 is missing a connection to 2 and 4. Now, one thing when I was going through this that I hadn't realized and hadn't put the dots together to, that Caden picked up on, is that 9 is the only number that has a connection to every single type, and also every single type connects to it somehow.
So it's reciprocal. Everyone has a connection to 9, and 9 has a connection to every other type through the integration, disintegration, and also their wings.
Which adds to them being like the crown of the Enneagram. See, we went back around to it.
Bringing it back.
We went back around, and it also it explains a couple of different things, as in why 9s generally have such a hard time typing themselves, because they connect to all types and all types connect to them. So there's a lot of similarities and a lot of things that you can connect to. And also it helps it helps explain that a lot of their strength comes from their empathy. And that's just because they can relate to a lot of different things, because they connect to every point in the triad, or every point in the Enneagram.
In the Enneagram, yeah.
More to come on this. When we do end up doing our book, I want this to be a huge focus for us, because I think we're on to something.
We're cracking the code. So I've solved it. It's solved shit. I solved it.
I also feel like the meme from It's Always Sunny, where Charlie's like on the board, yeah, and he's like, it all connects.
It's all connected.
I got so much Pepe Sylvia, which is what he's actually talking about in that episode. But yeah,
I've never seen It's Always Sunny, so I don't know.
It's a really good episode. You should watch it. But basically, in that, he's working in this mailroom, and he's trying to find he's trying to deliver the mail to this dude named Pepe Sylvia, but he can't find him, and so he thinks it's a conspiracy. So he just keeps repeating it. But yeah, and so it's just very interesting what connection each type is missing, or how it factors into them not missing anything, especially since with the 5, I think it's interesting because one misconception with the 5 is that they are cold or emotionless. And there's a quote from the Enneagram Institute that says not only are they not cold or emotionless, but they are one of the most sensitive types. And that's the problem, because they are so sensitive to their emotions that it feels like too much, so they have to shut it down. And I think that might be a basis for the 5s and connecting to everyone and all that. We'll explore more later. Book to come.
Give us a couple years.
Yeah, give us a couple years. And I don't know. If you have anything into that, email us. Like,
Yeah.
if you have some insight into why or how you think that missing connection maybe impacts your type, please email us. We would love to hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Are we gonna move on to our sort of
fun stuff?
last
Yeah.
section here?
Mm-hmm. All right. So we have a recurring segment where we were discussing the Elite Daily's article on what is the best sex position for your Enneagram type. And we have been discussing whether or not we think they fit or not. And then another article, which is, I forget what they're called, the Every Girl, also came up with their own later on. So we'll discuss that too. So for the type 9, the Elite Daily said that the ideal position for the 9 is missionary. The peacemaker, quote, the peacemaker type, much like the helper, loves intensity and care. Missionary may seem super traditional, but can actually be an intimate, connective moment. You can also embrace each other as you move by holding hands, which can level up the intensity. The Every Girl said that the type 9 position is seated oral sex. 9s are people pleasers, so they'll often find themselves doing what their partner wants during sex as much as possible. It's lovely for their partner, but they deserve a little time too. Try a seated position in which you stay seated with your legs spread while your partner comes from below to give you oral sex. Imagine you're sitting on the couch or a chair and your partner sits on the floor. This allows them access to all of you so they can try oral, finger, and toy stimulation all at once. We already gave oral sex to 2s.
Mm-hmm.
I do like their reasoning though. I think though that because we haven't given missionary to any number, I do think that it is a good one for 9s.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, see, it's weird for me to know what about like the stuff, like the body stuff and the sex stuff for me is a trans thing, and what about it is just like my innate personality as a 9, you know? Because I've always
Yeah.
just sort of been like, I don't really want to. I don't want people to do things for me or look at me or. And I was like, oh, that's just how I am as a person. I was like, no, Caden, you're trans. So desire is sort of a complicated subject for me to weigh in on and feel like I'm giving it I want to say objective opinion because it's not going to be objective, but feel like I'm giving a sort of accurate depiction and not something that's super clouded by where I'm coming from. But definitely going along with what your partner wants as a baseline thing for, like social interactions, but then also sexual interactions, going to be something that I think a lot of 9s tend towards. Just there's a lot of bottom energy that comes with being a 9.
I definitely can see 9s being more bottom oriented.
It's just mentally exhausting to have to know what you want all the time, So it's much easier if someone else just takes care of all of that.
Do you think integration you to like 3 would look more dominant?
Yes.
Or would it just be like feeling the emotions and being like, yes, please, just go ahead, take care of me in this?
No, it would be like, this is what I want. I'm going to go make it happen. Because that's kind of what the integration 3 bit is right? You're doing things constantly, but when you're a 3, you're doing things with a purpose.
Okay.
You're doing things because you want to do them, and because you are like, oh, okay, this is how I'm feeling.
So average 9s are bottoms, and then well integrated 9s are switches?
Yes. But I don't know. Email us. Tell us I'm wrong. You know what I'm realizing as we're doing this whole segment is that I just talked to my aunt about the fact that I run a podcast, and she's like, I'm gonna go listen to that. And, So if you're listening, Auntie, hello. Welcome to this portion of the podcast.
Sometimes I do think about that when I'm editing, and I'm like, oh wait, people I know
Listen to
might.
this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fine. No.
Mm-hmm. Actually,
Yeah.
Lily, one of my friends who's a 4, told me that she stopped listening to the podcast. And the reason being is because to her, it felt like listening, because she knows me so well, it felt like listening to a friend's conversation, like private conversation. And it
Uh-huh.
was too weird for her because she kept wanting to chime in, but also feeling like when she couldn't, like she was intruding.
Oh.
And so she was like, I don't think she has very much interest in the Enneagram itself. And so it was
Yeah.
more just, I'm going to support my friend, but then it just became
I'm just
too
like, oh,
much.
no.
Like, so
And
Lily,
we
no,
share a lot of intimate details. We're
we do.
getting to know our people, letting our
Hmm.
people get to know us. Very daunting task for a 9 and a 5.
Hmm. Yeah. So let's move on. We also have a reoccurring segment where I have assigned dog breeds to Enneagram types, and I kind of defend them here. So I think 9s are Labradors, Mastiffs, and Newfoundlands.
I claim Mastiff.
Um,
I
mhm,
think they're cute.
mhm. My
Let's
reason,
look up what they
I've
look like.
I've never had a Mastiff or a Newfoundland, so I'm not entirely sure if this one fits all the way. It's just more of like my step grandma had Mastiffs and Newfoundlands, and so just being around them on occasion, I picked up on this. But we had a chocolate lab that gave off very, very 9 energy. Um, just wanted to be loved and cuddled.
They're so
Um,
fluffy.
uh-huh. They're so good with kids too because everything to them is like, oh, this is okay. Yeah,
Oh,
you
do
just
you
sat
think
on
a
me. Okay, that's
lot of
fine.
nines
I'm
work?
not gonna do anything about it. Um,
Do you
just
think
because
a
they
lot of
want the
nines
love.
work in childcare?
Sorry.
Do you think a lot of nines work in childcare?
I think it's a possibility. I'm trying to think.
I've heard people being like, "Oh, nines work in HR," or nines work in mediation, or that kind of stuff. But I just wonder,
I
like, oh, twos work with childcare, but
mhm. I think 9s could work with childcare, but I think 9s might get exhausted from the fact that kids do not pick up on subtle clues and hints, and they are also so very blunt. And so I think that would become
they just like
exhausting.
don't. They always have a lot of like high stakes emotional energy. I feel like if I was
Hmm.
integrated, I could deal more with like direct service. I don't know. I work in like child care education stuff, but
Hmm.
I could do more direct service if I were like more integrated because I would just
Hmm.
be able to deal with it better.
Hmm. I feel like a 9 would do better with smaller classrooms, I think.
Oh yeah.
Hmm. Because, like, I think as a 5, I could be a very good teacher, but I don't think I would be good with young children unless I was like a special ed, specialized one-on-one kind of teacher.
Yeah. Like
Um,
American teaching system is also just kind of fun. So
yeah. So, but yeah. So those are the Enneagram dog types. Also, the Mastiff and the Newfoundland pretty much just had kind of the same personality to me. Whenever I was around them. So if you have Mastiffs and Newfoundlands and disagree, please email me. I will correct it in the next podcast.
hey,
Move on to memes. You can go
I
ahead and.
have one. I
Mhm.
think yours is better than mine though, so I'm gonna go first so that you can like finish off with a bang, right?
I think
I
yours
have
is pretty great
a
though.
what? You
You're.
like it? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks. I have the Spider-Man meme, the one with the 3 different Spider-Men all sort of pointing fingers at each other. And my sort of brain thing is like, oh, this is nines mistyping themselves, but they're like not in this meme. Like all of those are like the other types. And like the other one is like over on the side holding up a fake Spider-Man mask, being like, I am totally one of you too. And or that's the 369 triad. I haven't decided. It could go both ways.
So mine is the dog sitting in the room that's on fire, just saying, this is fine. And that's definitely the 9 kind of suppression, especially when they're not feeling their anger and it's building up.
Uh-huh.
Definitely a 9. This is fine. This is fine. This is
I
fine.
say that all the time. I'm fine. No, I say
You're
that all.
not fine, 9s. Let it out. But yeah. It's ready to wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
This is it. This is our podcast, guys.
mm-hmm.
I'm just kidding. We're gonna keep on.
Yeah, this brings to a close the series that we had been doing on just the individual types. So the way the rest of the year is going to work out is that we have 2 Enneagram episodes that are just kind of random Enneagram subjects. Do tune into them because they're not going to be like our random episodes of like the one we did on like Love is Blind. They will be more substantive Enneagram stuff, I would say.
I
And
think.
Enneagram tools. So we'll have those 2 for November and December, and then come January we're going to start a brand new series, which we can. Do you want to announce now, or do you want to announce later?
Maybe we just dangle it.
Dangle it?
Is that a good marketing strategy? A good marketing technique? We just like hint at something. I don't do marketing. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll just dangle it.
We'll dangle it for now.
Okay. So for our question of the month for next month, what is your favorite game? It can be board game, can be card game, can be video game, party game, just any game in general. I want to see if there's a trend throughout the different types.
9s is always a co-op game. I will just tell you now. 9s is always going to be a co-op game.
Our reigning theories are also that 5s love board games. And we have a penchant for them. But I'm curious to see other types, if there are any other patterns. So just let us know. Email us or tweet at us. Email us. Our email is EnneathingGoes@gmail.com, same way it's spelled in our episode title. And our Twitter is @EnneathingGoes. Please leave us a review, and thank you to everyone who has left a review, because we have gotten more reviews on Apple Podcasts. So thank you. Yeah, we were very excited when we read those. They were very, very nice reviews, and we thank you from the bottom of our heart.
Look, there are people out there that lead lives just as complex as ours, and we love them for it.
So we hope you guys are having a good night and having a good time.
Halloween, y'all.
Yeah. Actually, I think by the time this comes up, it'll be the day before.
It'll be the day before. Go be spooky. Have fun. Stay safe. It's COVID.
Bye.
Bye.